This is Adam from Edge. I'm here with Dai Vu. How are you doing, Dai?
I'm doing very well. How about you, Adam?
I'm good. Why don't you tell us what you do, what you're working on?
So I'm a director of virtualization and data center product management. So I have product management responsibility for various elements of our virtualization portfolio, VDI, Hyper-V, as well as data center solutions with our partners.
Okay. I want to talk about some of that in just a little bit, but first tell me what's new. What do you guys? What's coming next in terms of virtualization?
Well, one big thing is certainly our delivery of SP1 technologies. This applies both for Windows Server 2008 R2 as well as Windows 7. First on the Windows 7 front, that's largely uneventful because there aren't a lot of new features in there. It's really just a roll-up of fixes that we've been delivering via Windows Update. But with Windows Server 2008 R2, we are delivering a couple of new features that are very virtualization focused.
Okay.
So one is dynamic memory, which is the ability to manage your memory in the host server as a shared resource pool that you can basically dial up or dial down to the virtual machines as they need it. And another one is remote effects, which is a key enabler for remote desktop computing scenarios, both for VDI as well as session virtualization, and the ability to deliver more of a full fidelity desktop experience for those scenarios.
Okay, I want to ask you a little bit more about remote effects in a minute, but let's go back to dynamic memory. So it sounds like you're saying instead of this idea of when I create a VM, I allocate memory. When the VM starts, that memory is only available for that VM.
Right.
You're doing something differently now. Tell me what it looks like now, what the configuration.
Yeah, so really what it is when you basically configure a virtual machine, you can basically set a minimum memory and a maximum memory, and Hyper-V will automatically manage that based on the needs of the virtual machine. So, for example, for desktops, you can basically set the minimum boot memory for, say, for Windows 7. And then as the desktop or the virtual machine needs more memory, and if there's available memory in the pool, then you can leverage and allocate that memory to the virtual machine. And at the end of the day, what it does is it allows you to achieve much better consolidation ratios because you're not necessarily having to over provision memory to those virtual machines. And for VDI, for example, you can basically lower the cost per desktop or the cost per virtual machine because of that.
And that's because we can stack more virtual machines on a given host now because memory's less of a requirement?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think a lot of times for VDI type deployments, memory tends to be a gating factor, and the way you manage that is to typically just over provision memory to that box. And now you can just provision the right memory for that server, and you can more dynamically, more intelligently manage that memory across those virtual machines.
All right, very cool. Now the other feature that you mentioned was remote FX.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about what that gives me as an IT pro, or what that provides to my users.
Sure. So one of the barriers to VDI adoption today is that when people host desktops, they don't get the type of user experience that they expect from a local PC type of environment. And so what Remote FX does is it brings a lot of that remote desktop experience closer to the local life experience. And it does this by enabling you to virtualize graphical processor units on the host server. So now you can put a standard graphics card from NVIDIA or some other vendor, and what Hyper-V will do is it will virtualize that across the various desktop virtual machines. And then once you have virtualized that, you can leverage the host server GPUs. You can deliver more of a full fidelity 3D desktop experience to a variety of endpoint devices, whether that be rich clients, thin clients, or potentially even super low-end thin clients from folks like HP or Wise that could be leveraging a remote effects decoder, sort of more of a zero-based client, low wattage, low cost.
Okay, so you're talking about, when I think of that, I think of Windows 7 and Arrow, and if I've got a graphics card, I get all these functionality. So you're saying, how are we implementing it then? Are we putting a graphics card in the server and doing the rendering? Is that, or what are we doing there?
Yeah, exactly. So there are a number of different deployment options. So certainly you can put the graphics card in the server, and we'll virtualize that for you, just like we virtualize other devices and I/O devices on the server. We can also do it in software as well. But the advantage of being able to do it in the GPU is that because those are special purpose hardware for that particular task, and you're offloading that from the CPU, and therefore you could, for example, on our earlier discussions of dynamic memory, you can therefore leverage the CPU to add more virtual machines there. So then once it delivers that, it leverages RDP, for example, to deliver that payload, if you will, to an endpoint device, and the endpoint device will also decode the remote effects information, and that will be a full fidelity desktop.
Okay, and in terms of my server configuration, what do I need to do to light up that feature?
So what we'll end up doing is you'll probably need to just turn on remote effects as a capability on Windows Server 2000 R2 SP1. And then certainly if you have a physical GPU in the host server, it'll detect that and virtualize it. If not, it'll do it in software. And then certainly as an endpoint, you just need to have an RDP client, if you will, that can be able to take that remote effects information and display that and render that on the client device.
Okay, so pretty frictionless to turn on.
Yeah,
it sounds like.
pretty
Okay,
much.
and in terms of, you mentioned these are SP1 features. Do you have a timeline of when people can start taking a look at SP1 or when we're going to have it out?
Yeah, so we're looking to have the availability of beta in later this summer.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, cool. So pretty soon people can
pretty
look at that. Okay. So when you talk about these features, the ability to get more virtual machines on a physical host, you talk about this better user experience and UI that we can now deliver over remote FX. It sounds like you're really teeing up a good virtual desktop scenario for users.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think VDI is a great solution. It's a key component of our desktop virtualization portfolio, and we look at that in a very broad sense, which includes things like application virtualization, or AppV, as well as remote desktop services, formerly terminal services. And it's really the broad set of technologies that the companies can leverage to deploy in different scenarios. And so with VDI, we actually at the March 18th announced, we made a series of announcements that really drove not only the engineering and technology investments, but also increased level of partnership with Citrix, where we have joint offers that we're delivering on the market. You can get started with VDI at a very low cost point, more than a 50% discount for up to 250 devices. And then also, if you kind of dove in headfirst with VMware on the VDI side, because maybe you've had some success on the server side and maybe had some problems, it's an opportunity for you to trade in those unused or failed deployments for up to 500 licenses from the combined solution of Microsoft and Citrix. So we think it's a great scenario, and along with Citrix and Zen Desktop, we feel we have a very differentiated solution, because we are certainly focused on delivering that strong end user experience, but we also bring management. And that's a strong capability we provide with System Center, for example, because we know a lot of companies are already leveraging System Center to manage their desktops. I believe 2 out of every 3 enterprises are already leveraging System Center Configuration Manager. And so now you can leverage the same tools you do for the traditional distributed physical deployments as well as your virtual desktops. And that's a very powerful story for customers.
Okay. A lot of this sounds like it leverages Hyper-V. That's been on the market for a few years now.
Yep.
Kind of tell me how that's going for us. What are you guys seeing in terms of Hyper-V uptake and momentum, things like that?
Yeah, so we're seeing tremendous momentum for Hyper-V in the marketplace. So as you said, it's actually been in market for about 2 years now.
Okay.
Especially with the release of R2 last fall, some key features such as live migration, some performance enhancements, I think customers are really started to embrace that. If you actually look at some data, IDC with their quarterly tracker shows that Microsoft all up is at 25% share of new deployments compared to about 48% share for VMware. And we've gained about 3-4 points of share over the last year, and that during that same time period, VMware lost 3 or 4 points of share. And I think customers are really looking at the fact that they're deploying Windows Server 2008 R2, and they already have the technology for Hyper-V, so it's just a matter of just activating those bits. And they're doing it even if they've already invested in the VMware infrastructure. So they're taking that opportunity for new workloads, new servers, new projects to deploy Hyper-V servers side by side by ESX.
Okay. So Microsoft's all in with cloud. How did the virtualization stuff that you guys are working on fit into that? Fit into this new paradigm of cloud computing?
Well, if you kind of think about how the data centers evolving from more the traditional physical to the virtual, and then eventually to more combinations of cloud computing type environments. We see virtualization as a key stepping stone for customers. So once they're able to virtualize their infrastructure, I think it sets themselves very well to not only move to cloud computing environments, and cloud computing can be consumed via on-premise, where you could basically take some of our existing technologies like Hyper-V, System Center, and Windows Server, and create more of a shared pool across your organizations as more of a cloud computing environment. But you can also consume it via hosters. It could be applications, could be infrastructure, or you could leverage some of our Azure technologies, which is more of an application or platform service where you can build apps in the cloud. And I think the idea here is that once you sort of set yourself up, be able to manage virtual machines and shared resource pools, and be able to scale up and scale down based on the needs of the users, you can now leverage that across these different compute paradigms, because with Microsoft you have a common management solution that can federate capacity across the various scenarios.
Okay.
You have a common identity model, so you have you can federate across those solutions, and then certainly you have a common application model. So a lot of the applications that you're virtualizing and developing with .NET, for example, you'll be able to leverage that in the various factors, whether it be Azure, on-premise, or hoster.
Okay, cool. So it really sounds like something we put some thought into.
Yep.
So what guidance do you have for people that are watching this video? What should we go do next?
Well, I think, first of all, on the server side, if you already deployed Windows Server 2008, you already have access to Hyper-V. So the first call to action is to activate those bits. So whether it be for a new server deployment or a new project, leverage that, even if you already have ESX in your environment, because you already have access to the bits. And then certainly if you have System Center, which a lot of our enterprise customers do, you can now leverage and manage that across both your ESX and your Hyper-V deployment. So
cool.
Activate the bits and move those workloads onto Hyper-V. The second piece on the desktop side, if you're looking at Windows 7 migration, which many of our customers are, I would ask you to take a look at your desktop management strategy in a more holistic way, because it's a good opportunity to take a step back and think about how desktop virtualization can help with that migration, whether it be dealing with app to OS compatibility issues, or maybe looking at a way to sort of centralize your management via VDI, or maybe looking at your security anywhere access capabilities for your end users. It's an opportunity to look at, hey, this is a point in time opportunity, Windows 7, how can I leverage some of these technologies today?
Okay.
And then lastly, as you move to the cloud, I think this is an opportunity, if you're already virtualizing, say, 10, 20% of your environment, now you can start to think about, hey, shared resource pools across different organizations that you're supporting, and is there a way to sort of scale up and scale down based on the needs of the organization that you're set up very well as you move into the cloud environment.
All right. Good stuff. Thanks for your time, Dave.
Okay, thank you.